So now let's get to our Maui Grown Manaʻo program. If you don't know him, you're in for a treat.
You'll be surprised at how much you will learn in just one presentation. We feature the nation's leading scientists, researchers, and experts on medical use of cannabis.
Our new live event series delivers free bite-sized information that you can use right now.
We welcome you to this special presentation of Maui Grown Manaʻo. Aloha everyone, I am Anela Saito Takabayashi, Director of Retail Operations for Maui Grown Therapies. Welcome to this educational presentation by Dr. Andrew Weil. This is the 9th presentation in our Maui Grown Manaʻo series of online events. Maui Grown Manaʻo launched in April after the pandemic disrupted our popular Lunch and Learn series at UHMC. We wanted to continue to offer our educational programs even though we could no longer gather together. Like you, we've adapted to ongoing changes that coronavirus brought to our community and beyond. If you are one of our patients, you know about the changes we've made to safeguard your health. By placing a pre-order over the phone or online, our touchless pickup service means most of our patients are in and out of the dispensary within 5 minutes. We use hospital-grade air purifiers during operating hours, and we disinfect all surfaces with ozonation overnight. Staff and patients wear face masks and gloves because your health is very important to us. If you live in West Maui, I have a secret to share. We are planning to open our new location, Maui Grown Express, in Lahaina shortly after the new year. So West Siders, there will be no need to drive through the tunnel to access your dispensary products in 2021. Stay tuned for details at mauigrown.com. And now onto our Maui Grown Manaʻo presentation. Many of you will know Dr. Andrew Weil from TV. You may have seen him on PBS, Oprah, Dr. Oz, or another one of his many television appearances. Or you might read his monthly column in Prevention magazine. Many of you have some of his numerous books about health and wellness in your personal library. Dr. Weil is the founder and director of the Andrew Weil Center for Integrative Medicine at the University of Arizona, where he is also a clinical professor of medicine and professor of public health. He graduated from Harvard University with a degree in botany and later earned his MD from Harvard Medical School. In 1969, while he was still a medical student, he conducted the first human trials on the medicinal use of cannabis. Since then, Dr. Weil has combined his love of plants and medical science to become an internationally recognized expert on integrative medicine. His natural approach to healthcare emphasizes nutrition, exercise, spirituality, and botanical remedies. In 2015, Dr. Weil joined Maui Grown Therapies as our Chief Science Officer and Chair of our esteemed Science and Medical Advisory Board. Every year since 2016, he has hosted our annual Maui Medical Cannabis Symposium at the Maui Arts and Cultural Center. But this year, COVID had other plans. We're lucky he can join us virtually today to talk about cannabis and the anti-inflammatory lifestyle. After his presentation, he will answer your chat questions live, so keep your notepad nearby. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Andrew Weil.
I'm Dr. Andrew Weil, Chief Science Officer of Maui Grown Therapies, and I want to welcome you to this episode of the series Maui Grown Manaʻo, exploring all aspects of medical cannabis. Today I'm going to talk to you about inflammation, its importance in health and disease, why you should be following an anti-inflammatory lifestyle, and what the role of cannabis is in an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. We all know inflammation on the surface of the body. It's local redness, heat, swelling, and pain at an area that's been injured or under attack. Inflammation can be uncomfortable, but it's actually the cornerstone of the body's healing system. It's the way that the body gets more nourishment and more immune activity to an area that needs it. But inflammation is so powerful and it's so potentially destructive that it's very important that it end when it's supposed to end and that it stays where it's supposed to stay. If inflammation persists, if it escapes its boundaries of time and space, if it serves no purpose, it becomes productive of disease. It is important to be able to produce enough inflammation because that's your defense against infection, but not so much that it causes problems on its own. Too much inflammation can result in allergies, in autoimmunity, and long-term greatly increased risks of very serious chronic disease. The body has a very complex system of controls on inflammation to make sure that you can produce enough of it and not too much of it. This is controlled by hormones and regulatory substances, some of which increase inflammation and some of which decrease it. Starting about, I think, 20 years ago, I became interested in a hypothesis that was just on the horizon then, that chronic low-level inappropriate inflammation was the root cause of very serious diseases that kill and disable people prematurely in our society. And we first saw this with coronary artery disease, where it appears that inflammation in the lining of arteries really precedes the deposition of cholesterol and narrowing of arteries. And one reason that aspirin may be helpful in preventing heart attacks is that it's also an anti-inflammatory agent as well as a blood thinning agent. Neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease begin as inflammation in the brain. Ibuprofen, one of our most useful anti-inflammatory drugs, has a preventive effect in Alzheimer's because of its anti-inflammatory action. And the rate of Alzheimer's disease in India is lowest in any major country. And many people think that's because Indians eat turmeric at every meal. Turmeric is the most powerful natural anti-inflammatory agent known. You in Hawaii all know that well as olima and have fresh turmeric root available. Indians really eat that at every meal. Cancer is linked here as well, because anything that increases inflammation in the body simultaneously stimulates cells to divide more frequently, to proliferate. And whenever cells proliferate, there's an increased risk of malignant transformation. Aspirin, again, has a significant preventive effect on certain kinds of cancer, of esophageal cancer, colon cancer, because it is an anti-inflammatory agent and also an anti-proliferative agent. So to me, this was a fascinating way of thinking, because when I was in medical school, I was taught that these diseases, cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative disease, cancer, were separate disease entities that had nothing in common. And suddenly it began to appear that all of these may have a common root in chronic, inappropriate, low-level inflammation. And the good news here is that if there is a root common cause of these very serious diseases that kill and disable people prematurely, then there's a common way of reducing the risk of them. And that is by doing everything you can to contain inappropriate inflammation, inflammation that serves no purpose. So I said that we all know inflammation on the surface of the body, which can be quite visible and uncomfortable, but we're not aware of it internally unless it's so extreme as in joints that it causes arthritis, for example. But imperceptible, low-level inflammation over time can result in damage to arteries, damage to brain cells, and increase the risk of malignant transformation. So it is very important to do everything you can to keep inflammation in its place and to make sure that it is useful and not purposeless. Well, what are the factors that influence our inflammatory status? One of them is genetics, but there are many lifestyle factors that are under our control. Stress has a significant role in inflammation because the common stress hormones, cortisol, for example, increase inflammation in the body. Exposure to environmental toxins is very significant. Secondhand tobacco smoke, for example, is a strong pro-inflammatory agent, and I think we should be doing everything we can to minimize exposure to environmental toxins that can stimulate unnecessary inflammation. But probably the most important factor under our control is diet. Dietary choices have a major influence on inflammatory status. I think there's no question that the mainstream North American diet is pro-inflammatory. It gives us the wrong fats, the wrong kinds of carbohydrates, and not enough of the protective elements, which are mostly found in fruits, vegetables, herbs, and spices. So I want to talk a bit about this, and then I want to talk to you about the role of cannabis in an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. So for me, an anti-inflammatory lifestyle begins with right dietary choices. I've designed an anti-inflammatory diet, and I have an anti-inflammatory diet pyramid. You can find these in all of my books or on my website, drweil.com. So the first element of an anti-inflammatory diet is to avoid foods and ingredients that directly stimulate inflammation. And those are mostly found in refined, processed, and manufactured foods. So the first step of an anti-inflammatory diet is to try to minimize consumption or eliminate consumption of refined, processed, and manufactured foods. I mean, that really is the greatest change in eating habits in our society in the past 50 years. It's been written that our great-grandparents would not recognize as food what most people eat today. So I urge you to try to reduce consumption of food made by other people and to eat foods as close to the way nature produces them as possible. And that means mostly when you shop in supermarkets, sticking to the periphery of the supermarket where all the fresh stuff is and avoiding, all of the manufactured stuff that's in the middle aisles. And in that manufactured stuff, I said that, that gives us the wrong kinds of fats, that certain fats are precursors of some of these regulatory substances that increase inflammation. And those are particularly the omega-6 fatty acids that are found in refined vegetable oils. The other class of essential fats are omega-3 fats, and these are the ones that we get mainly from fish and fish oil and from algae and from a few plant sources, but they're much harder to get. And there has been a great shift in the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fats in our society's intake over the past, I'd say, 80 years. And the change has been that there's been a great increase in consumption of omega-6 fats, particularly as a result of refined soybean oil, which is in all processed foods, and not sufficient omega-3 fats to balance that. And this is one way, by the way, in which cannabis plays an important role because, cannabis, in addition to being a medicine and a psychoactive drug, is also a source of food. It's a source of a high-quality edible oil and an edible seed. And the seed has a good content of fiber, it has protein, and the seed and the oil it contains are rich in an omega-3 fatty acid, which the body can turn into one of these that it needs. So I hope that as cannabis becomes more accepted in our society and barriers to its cultivation and sale of products begin to disappear, that more cannabis-derived foods will be available to us, and that may help correct some of this balance in the fats that we're eating. In general, you want to avoid vegetable shortening, margarine, all of the polyunsaturated vegetable oils, especially when they're heated, tend to break down to products that are pro-inflammatory. It's good to eat good quality olive oil. Avocado oil is another good fat to eat. I am also a fan of algae oil, a relatively new product which is high in monounsaturated fat and has one of the essential omega-3 fatty acids in it. In terms of carbohydrates, I think the most important thing to understand is that refined carbohydrates, products made from flours and sugar, digest very quickly, raise blood sugar quickly, and that increases pro-inflammatory substances in the body. So reducing intake of refined carbohydrate foods in favor of whole grains and root vegetables, winter squashes. These are slow digesting carbohydrates that don't have that effect on blood sugar and are much better. In addition, I mentioned that a problem with the mainstream diet is that it's deficient in the protective substances. These are called protective phytonutrients that are found mostly in fruits, vegetables, also herbs, spices, beverages, and even the psychoactive substances that people use, including cannabis. These in fruits and vegetables, these protective substances often are the pigments that are in plants. So a good piece of advice is to try to eat across the color spectrum every day. To think about, what did you eat today that was red? What did you eat that was orange? What was yellow? What was green? What was white? All these different slices of the color spectrum are due to particular pigments that have distinctive protective actions on the body, and most people are not getting enough of them. And we also get these from herbs and spices, which are good to include in the diet. I mentioned turmeric, the most powerful natural anti-inflammatory agent known. Ginger is a relative of turmeric, also very useful, but a variety of herbs and spices, very helpful. So where does cannabis fit into this? There have been many studies demonstrating the anti-inflammatory activity of components of cannabis. And I have to say here that the chemistry of cannabis is dauntingly complex. Cannabis contains probably 400 or more active compounds, and only a few of these have been studied. The most famous one, THC, which is the main psychoactive compound, CBD, which has a great deal of popularity now as a remedy for all sorts of things. Both of these have anti-inflammatory activity, as do the other cannabinoids. And then there's other classes of substances in cannabis, a group called terpenoids, which are aromatic compounds that account for the distinctive odors and flavors of cannabis. And these also have anti-inflammatory activity. I'm going to let some of our other experts go into more detail on this, but the cannabinoids in cannabis interact with the body's endocannabinoid system. We have receptors for cannabinoids, and there are two classes of them, and a major one called the CB2 receptor has a direct influence on inflammatory status. And it's possible that using cannabis as part of an anti-inflammatory lifestyle can reverse or blunt some of the pro-inflammatory effect of the dietary imbalances that are such a problem today, of people eating too many of the wrong kinds of fats and too many of the wrong kinds of carbohydrates. We're probably a long way from being able to say that cannabis or particular elements of cannabis can be turned into anti-inflammatory medications that work as well as some of the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs that we have at the moment. But I think, given the research that's out there, there's reason to believe that we will have more and more evidence for the anti-inflammatory activity of cannabis and various preparations of cannabis. I'm not going to tell people who don't use cannabis to begin using it for its anti-inflammatory effect, but I think if for people who do use it, it is good to know that this can be a component of an anti-inflammatory lifestyle. And also, you may find that different cannabis preparations actually work for specific inflammatory conditions that you may have, whether this is inflammation in joints, inflammation in the GI tract, or other parts of the body. So we're busily collecting this kind of information, and at Maui Grown Therapies, our main mission is education of patients, and we're trying to get this information out to you. I want to repeat again that it is very important to try to modify your inflammatory status, because most people in our culture are going through life in a pro-inflammatory state. And even though this may not manifest as arthritis or allergy or other obvious problems, in the long run, being in a pro-inflammatory state, having unnecessary, purposeless, ongoing, low-level inflammation throughout the body clearly increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, increases the risk of neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, and increases the risk of cancer. So, and these are the major, we call these the diseases of aging or age-related diseases. Some years ago, I wrote a book called Healthy Aging. And one of the main questions that I looked at in that book is, whether it is inevitable that we're going to develop one or another of these diseases as we grow older. And I think that the answer to that question is clearly no, that the aging process can be separated from age-related disease, that it's possible to uh, live long and well and then have a rapid drop-off at the end. I think that's what we'd all like to do. There's a technical term for this. It's called compression of morbidity, where morbidity has the meaning of sickness. And the idea is that you're trying to squeeze the period of disability and decline at the end of life into as short a period as possible. So live long and well, have a rapid drop off at the end. And to me, the probably single most important step you can take in that is to control low-level purposeless inflammation. So all of the lifestyle factors that we know that contribute to health, eating right, getting right physical activity, managing stress, getting good rest and sleep, having good relationships, good emotional states, all of these are very important factors, and all of them probably also modify our inflammatory status. But to me, this is the single greatest step that we can take to experience healthy aging and to increase the chances that we will have compression of morbidity as we grow older and enjoy optimum health throughout life. So again, beginning with an anti-inflammatory diet, avoiding environmental toxins, learning and practicing methods of neutralizing the harmful effects of stress, and using natural products that help us control inflammation, such as spices like turmeric. And I think cannabis is certainly in this category of natural anti-inflammatory agents. And I think it can be an important component of an anti-inflammatory lifestyle.
That was great, Dr. Weil. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. How's it going in Arizona?
It's hot here, and everybody's waiting to see how the election comes out, and it's sunny and nice.
Thank you. Well, we have a ton of questions rolling in, so let's just jump right in.
Sure.
I'll start with the first one. We have Dan in Paia, and his question is, isn't coronavirus an inflammatory disease? If I follow an anti-inflammatory lifestyle, will it build up my immunity against coronavirus?
Well, I would say coronavirus is a viral infectious disease. Inflammation may be one result of infection with coronavirus, but I wouldn't call it an inflammatory disease. It does seem that in serious cases, that inflammation is part of the reason that people get very sick. And that's one reason why steroids have been successful, because of their anti-inflammatory effect and an immune suppressive effect. So I think if you lead an anti-inflammatory lifestyle, maybe that will increase your chances of not getting very sick if you do get the virus.
Great. Great to know. Our next question is from Brenda in Makaʻau. Organic food can be very expensive in Hawaii. Yes, it can, Brenda. Is it okay to eat regular fruits and vegetables? Do we still get the same benefits?
Well, first of all, I usually recommend that people check out the website of the Environmental Working Group. It's ewg.org. It's a nonprofit organization in Washington, D.C. And one of the things they do is put out periodically a list of what they call the dirty dozen, the 10 most contaminated produce crops. And there's also a clean 15 list of the least contaminated. So I would say if you want to eat something that's on the dirty dozen list, and things like strawberries and green beans are always on it, I would say either try to get organic versions or don't eat them. With the clean 15 list, which includes things like avocados and bananas and a bunch of other stuff, it's not important. So, I would say there, the extra expensive organic food is not worth it. In many parts of the country, as consumer demand for organic produce has increased, prices have come down and distribution has gotten better. So I think by demanding this, we can see that happen. And also, of course, this is better for the environment as well as for personal health. There's a lot of argument as to whether organic produce is more nutritious. It looks as if, I think that the main benefit of organic foods is not getting the residues of toxic agrochemicals. It's possible that some of the protective phytonutrients in fruits and vegetables are higher in organic produce.
The good news is we have a local strawberries farm that we can participate in supporting them.
Great.
All right, next one, Catherine in Wailea. Should we be taking aspirin or ibuprofen as a preventative for dementia or Alzheimer's disease?
Not aspirin. There is a demonstrated preventive effect of ibuprofen, but ibuprofen has a downside too. It can cause stomach bleeding and hemorrhages. So I think you really have to evaluate the risks and benefits. If you have a high familial risk of Alzheimer's disease, that may be way on the side of taking a preventive like that. I would say you discuss that with your physician. But ibuprofen works because Alzheimer's begins as an inflammatory process in the brain. So as we know, there's a very powerful natural anti-inflammatory agent, turmeric. And there's some good scientific data showing that people who eat turmeric regularly, also this reduces the risk of Alzheimer's. So I would say I would do that first. There's no downside to that.
Perfect. For us Hawaii people, it's Olena here.
Olena, right.
All right, Wendy in Waikapu. I read your books and know you recommend salmon, but in Hawaii, we have a lot of other fish, not salmon. Do we get the same benefits from eating other types of fish?
Well, all fish provide good protein. The advantage of salmon is that it's a source of omega-3 fatty acids. So that's found in fatty fish. So I don't know I'm trying to remember what fish you might have in Hawaii that would also supply that. But other good omega-3 sources are fish like sardines and herring, mackerel. So a lot of these are cold water fish, and the fish have this fat to keep them warm. So I would say, all fish likely to be good, but one good source that I recommend to people are canned sardines or canned kippers. They're cheap, they're available everywhere. Some people wrinkle up their noses at them, but I like just mashing them up with some mustard and lemon and onion and eating them on a cracker or lettuce. That's a really good omega-3 source.
Oh no, we eat it here with onions and poi.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Mark in Kapolei. How do you know if you have low-level internal inflammation? Are there any symptoms or a test you can take?
You may not have symptoms, but there are tests. There's things like C-reactive protein tests and various blood tests that can look at inflammatory markers. I think in the near future, we're going to have much better ones that you can check your inflammatory status. But you can get some of this information from blood tests that can be done routinely.
Very good. This is surprising. We have someone out in San Diego named Rob. When you talk about using cannabis, do you mean CBD, THC, or both? Also, are edibles better than smoking?
Well, I definitely mean both, because I think that CBD by itself does not have the activity of the combination. So my preference would be for whole cannabis or cannabis products that have both of those cannabinoids in them. And in terms of edibles being better, I guess my prejudice is against smoking and inhalation. So I think if you can find edible products, that's desirable.
All right. Donna in Kula, she wants to know, you said if we don't use cannabis, not to start now. I just turned 65 and it sounds like it might be helpful. Should I consider using it for inflammation?
Well, if you think it may be helpful for things, I would give it a try and see how it agrees with you. It's got such low risk, but there's a great deal of individual variation in response. So, if you have a particular problem and you want to see how it affects it, give it a try.
All right, there you go, Donna. Stephen in Kahului. What exactly are refined carbs? How about white rice? Is it okay to eat? And I heard brown rice has arsenic in it, which is...
Okay, several questions there. Well, the big difference is between whole grains and pulverized grains. So even though white rice has been polished and the bran has been removed, it's still a whole grain, and the starch is densely compacted. So it digests slowly and raises blood sugar, not as fast as something made from rice flour. So when you mill a grain into flour, whether or not the bran is there, whether or not the germ is there, the starch is converted into a material that has infinite surface area. And it's a snap for digestive enzymes to convert that to sugar, raise blood sugar, and cause all the problems that associated with that. So I think this is a really important point, that people don't understand the difference between whole grains, which means a whole grain you can see, or a grain cracked into a few big pieces, and a pulverized grain. And when I ask people to name a whole grain food, the usual answer I get is whole wheat bread. That's not whole grain food. Where are the grains? It's basically colored white bread. The question about brown rice is interesting. The rice plant tends to accumulate arsenic, which occurs naturally in the soil and water in varying amounts in different parts of the world. And it is true that brown rice accumulates more arsenic than white rice. Now, it really depends where the rice is grown. And some growers in California will assure you about the arsenic content of rice. I think this is a real concern, though, because I've known a few families that were raising infants and very young kids on brown rice milk, and found that they had high arsenic levels in the blood. So I think it's something to be aware of.
All right. So white rice over brown rice is better?
A difficult question, because the brown rice, you're getting fiber and bran and some minerals and some germ. But personally, I prefer white rice generally. I eat some brown rice. I also love black rice and red rice and wild rice. But I certainly enjoy white rice more with sushi, for example.
Yes, me too. Favorite. All right, let's check on the next one. We have a question from Township, Michigan. Patricia, is it more beneficial to take both CBD and THC for inflammation, or just CBD?
Definitely, it is more useful to take the combination. That's what I said earlier. I think that we don't have a great deal of evidence for the therapeutic effects of CBD alone. There's a lot of people claim benefits from it, but I think CBD is much more effective when it's in combination with THC.
All right, very good. Another inflammatory question from Chujin in Lahaina. What are the top daily supplements you recommend for anti-inflammatory benefits?
Well, I would recommend a good multi-nutrient supplement that gives you the right mix of vitamins and minerals. I would recommend taking supplemental turmeric. You could also eat a lemon at every meal, but it has so many good benefits that you might want to take that as a supplement. I also let me see what else I take myself. I use some Asian mushrooms that have anti-inflammatory effect, like reishi is a good one. Yeah. And I think that green tea is also very helpful. I personally like matcha green tea, the powdered stuff, because it has a really high content of antioxidants.
Good. Sounds like you spend a lot of time in Japan with the sushi and the matcha green tea.
I've spent a lot of time in Japan. I love it there.
All right, we got Michael from Kihei. How does proper hydration play into anti-inflammatory lifestyle? Anything beyond the usual 8 cups of water?
I think proper hydration plays into general health and well-being. I don't think it specifically has anti-inflammatory effects, but it's just very important to make sure you're getting enough liquid. It doesn't have to be water. It can be unsweetened tea. It can be sparkling water with a little bit of fruit juice in it. But drinks that are mostly water, very good for health, but not specifically for anti-inflammation.
Right, agreed. Hydration is important. So we have a question from Sherry in Kailua Kona. Can you update us on changes in federal legislation to allow more objective research into cannabis?
Well, we're all waiting for cannabis to be taken out of federal Schedule 1. which declares that those substances have great potential for abuse and no therapeutic effect. Obviously, that is not so. Arizona just legalized recreational marijuana as well as medical marijuana. So I think this is a trend across the country. And as more states do that, I think the pressure on the federal government will be great to not only move this out of Schedule 1, but really to allow more research into the potential benefits of cannabis. So I'm sure that's going to happen. I hope sooner than later.
Right. Do you have any interest in doing research in cannabis?
I'm not a researcher. I'm a clinician. I like to inspire researchers. I like to think of things that they should be studying.
All right. That's great. All right. Let's see what else we got. We got Ellen from Lahaina. Aloha, Dr. Weil. I have arthritis pain in my hand, fingers, and knee. Which type of cannabis or CBD would you recommend?
Well, again, I wouldn't recommend CBD, isolated CBD. I would recommend a whole cannabis product or an extract that has both THC and CBD in it. And you might talk to people in our dispensary in Maui Grown Therapies because they're very knowledgeable and can help advise you about what products might be best for you.
Right. Okay, thank you for that. Susan out in Lahaina, what are your feelings on dairy? If tolerated, another doctor suggests eliminating sugar, gluten, and dairy to reduce brain inflammation.
We could eliminate everything and we'd have nothing to eat. I think first of all, when you're talking about dairy, we'll talk about cow's milk specifically because other forms of milk like goat's milk and sheep's milk are different and may not be so much of a problem. Here, just one observation I've made: if one or both parents have a history of allergy or autoimmunity, I strongly advise that any children that they have not be exposed to cow's milk for a certain period of infancy. I don't know what that is. It might be a year, might be 2 years, might be 3 years. If you wait and introduce it slowly, you may be okay. But if such kids are given cow's milk in any form too soon, they're very likely to develop infantile eczema, childhood asthma, later in life, sinus conditions, autoimmune conditions, a whole range of problems. So there's something in cow's milk that can irritate the immune system. Then there are other problems with cow's milk. Many people can't digest the sugars in it. The fat dairy fat is questionable as to whether it's good for us or not good for us. But there's the question of hormones in milk and pesticides and what forms of milk you use. So personally, I like high quality cheese, natural cheeses. I can't imagine life without Parmesan, for example. I don't eat almost no butter or cream, occasional ice cream, some yogurt, but other than that, I don't eat dairy products. If people have autoimmune conditions, allergies, inflammatory conditions in general, it's worth experimenting to see whether eliminating cow's milk in all of its forms gives you benefit. You have to do it for like 4 to 6 weeks and then add it back and see if you can notice anything about that. If you do eliminate it, and especially in kids, you can try goat's milk, or soy milk is probably the best alternative.
Right, and those are two great options. What about almond milk?
The problem with all the other ones, almond milk and rice milk and oat milk, is that they're very low in protein compared to cow's milk. So the only alternative milk that's up there is soy milk that has the same amount of protein. So if you're going to use something like almond milk, especially in growing kids, you want to supplement their diet with another protein source.
Oh, great information. Katie in Makawao, you said to eat cannabis seeds, but I've never seen them anywhere. Can you buy them in a store, or is it legal to eat them without a card?
I think it is legal to eat them. I've sometimes seen them available. I'm trying to remember where I used to get them. This is one of the problems of the federal law. It's really made it difficult for people to develop and market edible cannabis products, but not with any drug effects in them. But I used to buy hemp seeds, and they're very good toasted, and toasted in a dry pan, and then you can put some tamari on them, or or garlic. They're just great as a snack. And the oil pressed from them is a very high quality oil. So I sometimes see hemp oil available online, and I would check to see if you can find hemp seeds as well. There's no reason why you should not be able to buy them.
Yeah, I believe they're available here in our health food stores, both
Good.
the hemp seeds and hemp oil.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, another one, Linda from Kihei. I consume fresh cannabis buds and leaves daily. What is your take on how this will affect me? Will it improve my health?
Without knowing more about you, I really can't say. I'd be curious to know what you've noted in the time that you've been using it, but I don't have enough information to give you an answer on that.
Right. Okay. Oh, this is a good one with regards to turmeric or olena. Do you recommend fresh or powdered turmeric? And then how do you use cannabis to treat Parkinson's?
Well, I think any form of turmeric that you can get, you're lucky in Hawaii to have very good quality fresh turmeric, and you can either juice that. I've had some very good smoothies that have turmeric in it, or you can just grate it into a salad. You can also, dried turmeric you can mix into things, although it's got a pungent taste. And if you need high doses of it for serious inflammatory conditions, it might be better to take it as an extract in capsules or tablets. And the other question was about cannabis
to treat Parkinson's.
I really don't have information on that, so I don't know. I think you would just, since it's so devoid of harm, it's something you can try. One of the problems in Parkinson's disease is muscle rigidity, and we know that cannabis can be very helpful for that. That it relaxes stiff muscles, so it may be useful for that.
Right. Okay, this is a question about environmental toxins from AJ and Makawao. Besides secondhand smoke, are there other environmental toxins that cause inflammation? How do we avoid them?
Well, I think all environmental toxins are suspect. So secondhand smoke is a big one. I would try to phase out and keep any poisons, including pesticides and herbicides, out of the house. Probably all volatile solvents you want to keep in places where you're not going to be breathing them. I'm very suspicious of plastics. We keep finding out new ones that are, not good for you. I think it's probably good to phase plastics out of your life. And then I think paying attention to the water you're drinking and finding out what's in it and what kind of system you need, or what, how you purify the drinking water. I think that's very important.
This is just kind of my own question. What do you think about drinking water out of like copper flasks or cups? Now it's kind of like a trend now.
Yeah, I think that's fine. You don't want too much copper in your system, but plain water is not going to leach copper out. It's only if you got something acid in there. So I think that's fine. I think that's fine.
Yeah, okay. Sherry from Kailua Kona, can you talk about differences in effects of cannabis, if it's smoke, taken in a tablet form, lozenge, or eaten in food?
Well, there's a big difference between inhaling the smoke or vapors of cannabis. First of all, just in the rapidity of the onset of effects. And some people like that. One of the problems with people who are used to inhaling it is that when you take it orally, there's a long lag time. And people may not realize that, they're not getting the effect, and they take more of it and then wind up having too much. I think cannabis in general is a stronger psychoactive agent when it's eaten. So you just have to be prepared for that. And the effects are different. It has more of a body effect when it's eaten. So again, you have to experiment and see what agrees with you.
Totally agree. We've all heard the cookie casualty stories here at the dispensary.
Yeah, I've had personal experience with that.
All right, Emma from Makawao. Which cannabinoids are responsible for appetite stimulation? Are there strains that do not give you the munchies?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure I'm the expert on that. I would defer to Michael Backus, who is another one of our scientific advisors, and ask him that question. But one observation, just interesting, is that there seems to be some degree of cultural expectation about the munchies. And there have been reports from other cultures, I think one was Jamaica, where people who smoked very strong pot did not get the munchies, and they didn't expect to. So maybe this is something, it's culturally conditioned, and it gives us a license to, eat a pint of ice cream at a city.
I agree. All right, we have Todd from Maui. What is your opinion on coconut oil with regard to inflammation?
Well, I do not recommend coconut oil as a food. I think I love to eat coconut, and I like putting coconut oil on my skin. But first of all, I don't like the feel of coconut oil in my mouth. It feels very heavy. And I also don't like full fat coconut milk in things. I use cashew milk instead when I make Thai curries, for example. And it tastes just as good, and it's got a much healthier fatty acid profile. I think there's all sorts of health claims made for coconut oil. There's very little scientific evidence to support them. And the clear fact is that the fatty acids in coconut oil are not good for your heart and arteries. And I think there's just no question about that.
Wow, that's great information. We started using coconut oil for cooking, so.
A lot of people do. I'll tell you what I much prefer. I really recommend avocado oil. That is it used to, the disadvantage of it used to be expensive, and now it has to come way down in price. But that is a much healthier oil to use. It's got a very high smoke point, neutral taste, and I like it a lot.
Very good. Avocados in general is really good for you, huh?
Definitely.
Okay, next we have Anne in Kihei. What do you think of fecal oil? How do you dose it? What is the best time to take it? Fecal, I think, referring to our full extract cannabis oil that we offer in the dispensary, and it's similar to the Rick Simpson oil.
I see. I have no experience with that, so I really can't give you any advice about that.
All right. Do you recommend using cannabis without THC, or does THC have significant benefits? I think this goes back to
as I've said, I think THC has significant benefits, and I think you want, whatever cannabis product you take, you want some THC in there.
All right. And I know you're in Arizona. I don't know if you shop anywhere in LA at any of the dispensaries, but there's someone in LA, Ron. He was here last year and shopped at Maui Grown Therapies, and he's wondering if you know any good dispensaries like ours out in LA.
Sorry, I don't. I'm not an expert on that. I'm sure there are, but we're awfully good, so it'd be hard to match our, what we do.
Right. Okay, we're wrapping up, getting towards the end here, but we have a question from Jimmy in Wai'ehu. My dad has a lot of back pain due to inflammation. What would you recommend for him as far as diet or medical marijuana?
Well, my anti-inflammatory diet, which you can find on my website, drweil.com, or in any of my books, anti-inflammatory supplements like omega-3, like good fish oil supplement, turmeric supplement, and experimenting with cannabis to see how that works as well, because many people report relief from back pain.
All right. Gretchen in Wailuku. She wants to know, how often do you think people should smoke marijuana for inflammation?
Again, I think that's a very individual matter. So, you have to find out what frequency works best for you to control the discomfort.
All right. Well, just so you know, there's a bunch of us that have been following your 8 weeks to optimal
I heard
health.
that. I'm delighted.
We're on week 7. And
almost done.
Yeah, it's been a journey for a bunch of us, but my favorite part was the news fasts and the walk.
Yeah, I can't recommend news fasting too highly, especially right now.
Looking forward to those election results out there in Arizona. Yeah. I'm going to wrap it up with one last question for you, Dr. Weil.
We have Jimmy from Haiku. Is black pepper required to make turmeric work?
If you eat turmeric or a turmeric extract and you want to treat inflammation in the gut, you don't have to worry about that. But if you want the effects in the body as a whole, yes, you need to take it with black pepper, which facilitates absorption of the active compounds in turmeric. Indians who eat turmeric at every meal almost always eat it with black pepper in the recipes. And almost all of the turmeric supplements that you'll see on the market now will say on the label that they have a black pepper extract. Sometimes they say biopurine or piperine. It's all the same. But you don't want to take, if you're looking for something to treat systemic inflammation, yes, you want to make sure there's black pepper along with it.
Good. I've been doing it correctly then.
Great.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have time for today. It's been such a pleasure to see you and get to talk with you today, Dr. Weil.
Yes, I enjoyed it.
All right. Well, mahalo. It's always good to talk to you, and we look forward to seeing you on Maui soon.
I can't wait. See you soon.
All right. To our participants, check your inbox for information about our next Maui Grown Manaʻo. Here in Hawaii, we don't say goodbye, but we say ahui ho until we meet again. Mahalo.
We hope you enjoyed this presentation. For other episodes of Maui Grown Manaʻo, visit our website, mauigrown.com. Aloha and mahalo.